This is Los Altos Hills, a wealthy suburban town of 8,500 people in the San Francisco Bay Area that was in the news a few years ago over its fight with navigation app Waze. Los Altos Hills was one of many suburbs across North America concerned that Waze was sending too much outsider traffic through their quiet residential streets. People here and elsewhere tried a variety of tactics, from requesting the company remove certain streets to putting up signs prohibiting through traffic to banning certain turns during rush hour. In some cases, residents fabricated reports of traffic accidents on the app to send a signal that their neighborhood is closed. On one hand, all of this is understandable. Cars are dangerous, loud, and they pollute. Having a lot of traffic through your neighborhood degrades your quality of life in meaningful ways, including threatening your kids' ability to be independent and play outside. Residents on certain roads that saw sharp increases in traffic reported being afraid to cross the road to get their mail.
On the other hand, it's hard not to notice a certain contradiction. At the same time that they're fighting to keep other people's traffic away from their neighborhood, Los Altos Hills is literally built to generate traffic for other neighborhoods. There's no grocery store within the borders of this 9 square mile or 23 square kilometer town. In fact, there are very nearly no stores at all, and this is not by chance. Los Altos Hills has a complete ban on commercial properties, meaning the only retail in town is a bookstore on a college campus and a gift shop at a monastery. Residents must travel elsewhere to buy essentially anything. And with its inconsistent sidewalks and close to zero transit, when residents leave, they're almost always driving. The town plan mentions its dependence on the rest of the Bay Area for stores and employment, but assures that the relationship isn't one-sided because the town has a lot of natural beauty that other Bay Area residents can move there to enjoy or admire from afar.
If there's anything we've learned following urban planning and city politics, it's that questioning the role of cars in cities really strikes a nerve. When you talk about the downsides of cars, from noise to safety to pollution, or support policies that give less space and priority to cars, from pedestrian streets to bike lanes to transit priority corridors and traffic calming, you're accused of waging a war on cars and attacking people's basic freedoms. We've seen this on our own channel when we talk about bikes and transit, and we saw this when living in Montreal under Mayor Valerie Plante, who is constantly accused of being anti-car for pedestrian streets and new bike infrastructure. Before that, we lived in Toronto under Suburban Mayor Rob Ford, when he and his brother Doug Ford, then City Councillor but now Premier of Ontario, were the ones denouncing the war on cars fought by the downtown elites. Car advocacy group Get Toronto Moving highlights anti-car environmentalism like bike lanes, transit signal priority, and no idling signs.
Everyone seems to frame this debate as the anti-car urbanites versus the pro-car suburbanites, but we think this is a big misunderstanding, and not just because we know lots of people in the suburbs with more urbanist views who want better bike and transit infrastructure. Even the stereotypical suburbanites who happily drive everywhere are well aware of the downsides of cars, and willing to implement policies and designs that manage and limit cars in their own neighborhoods. We saw this with the example of Los Altos Hills at the beginning, which fought its own war against cars from the Waze app, but it's way more than just one rich town's feud with a technology company. Avoiding car traffic around your home is a part of the suburban dream, built into the design of the suburbs in fundamental ways.
One of the most distinctive features of post-war North American suburbia, and one of the most desirable locations for a suburban house, is a cul-de-sac. Real estate ads mention them prominently. And studies have found that cul-de-sacs can increase the property value of a house by 10, 20, and even 30%. People like living on cul-de-sacs for the traffic safety and the quality of life. People don't like tons of traffic whizzing by their front door, especially suburban families who appreciate it as a natural place for children to gather and play. People also appreciate the lack of noise from motors, car stereos, and horns. It's easier to sleep. It's hard to see the suburbs as entirely for the freedom of cars when their basic road layout, including cul-de-sacs, courts, and other circuitous designs, is meant to limit and discourage traffic.
It's not just road layouts. Suburban-style zoning that bans shops and businesses in residential neighborhoods is usually justified with a worry about traffic, and traffic comes up all the time as a reason to ban denser housing. In the suburbs, traffic is actually a really big deal, and avoiding it is one of the top priorities for residents. Part of the constant concern about traffic is people not wanting congestion slowing down their trips. But part of it is also not wanting their quiet, safe, pleasant street overrun by a bunch of new cars or trucks. Minimizing the impact of cars is even built into the basic design of suburban housing. A common justification for large suburban front lawns and houses being 10 or more meters from the sidewalk is to put you further away from any traffic that does go through your neighborhood, for the noise and the possibility of a car crashing into your property. This actually happened to a neighboring house when I was a kid.
The suburbs are, in a pretty fundamental way, built on a recognition of the negative effects of traffic and a desire to limit cars in their own neighborhoods. In that sense, we're not so different after all. That's why it's hard to take it seriously when we're accused of being anti-car or against people's freedom to drive. Can someone who enjoys living on a suburban cul-de-sac and who doesn't want denser housing in their neighborhood because of the traffic really complain about people who live closer to downtown building bike lanes, giving less space to cars, and trying to slow or reduce traffic? These traffic calming barriers in Montreal were installed in 2011 to block cars driving through a school zone. Is this a war on the car? An attack on people's right to drive wherever they want? Because this is functionally the same as a suburban cul-de-sac. Maybe we don't see cul-de-sacs as a limit on freedom because they're built like that from the beginning, while these barriers were added in later, but they do the same thing. They block through traffic.
We're making the point that initiatives like traffic calming, bike lanes, and transit priority are the urbanist equivalents to suburban designs and policies, like cul-de-sacs, single-use zoning, and density restrictions, because they're all meant to manage and limit the effects of cars. There is a major difference, though, because the urbanist approach to managing cars is built on providing alternatives and reducing the amount of driving that people have to do, while the suburban approach is based on locking people into driving and increasing overall traffic, but moving it somewhere else for other people to deal with. Montreal's traffic calming barriers aren't actually the same as a suburban cul-de-sac, because a cul-de-sac blocks all traffic modes, creating longer distances and encouraging people to drive. Traffic calming barriers, which you've also seen in Quebec City and Ottawa for example, block cars but continue to allow easy access for people on foot or bike. With technology, they could also be built to allow transit to go through. The contrast between a completely impermeable cul-de-sac and a selectively impermeable traffic calming setup really shows the difference between urbanism and what we might call suburbanism. But this is more than just road layout. Denser, mixed-use development that puts people close to schools, stores, and jobs can actually get to the root of the traffic problem by making people not have to drive as much, instead of just pushing the driving somewhere else.
That is the basic contradiction of North American car-centric suburbia. If you live in a cul-de-sac or other quiet street in the middle of a residential neighborhood, isolated from businesses and far from your job downtown, you've minimized traffic around your home and immediate neighborhood, but you've maximized the amount of traffic you generate for other people. Whether that's other suburbanites who can't afford the desirable quiet streets within suburbia, or that's people who live in the central city whose neighborhoods you drive through to get to your job, in some cases on highways from the 60s and 70s that demolished large parts of their neighborhood. Suburbia, at least as we largely know it today, is based on avoiding traffic as much as possible while generating as much traffic as possible. It's anti-car in your own neighborhood, but pro-car through other people's neighborhoods.
While this is a critical perspective on North American car-dependent suburban development, our basic point in this video is that we're all more similar than we think. Almost everyone, whether urban or suburban, recognizes the downsides of cars and wants to manage and limit cars around their home and in their own neighborhoods. Everyone wants their children to be able to play outside safely. No one likes waking up in the middle of the night because of loud cars. What we need is a recognition that urbanist policies like pedestrian streets, bike lanes, transit priority, and traffic calming aren't crazy anti-car aberrations. They're an understandable expression of concerns and preferences that most people have. This video is a call to think in a more productive way about how we can reduce car dependence and overall car traffic, instead of trying to fix the problem by moving it somewhere else for other people to deal with.
Don't forget to reduce traffic for everyone and subscribe. We'd like to extend a special thanks to our growing community of patrons.